This is part 10 of our 12-part series of recollections of famous events in history. And today I'd like to talk about the Arab OPEC oil embargo of 1973 to 1974. The largely Middle Eastern oil-producing countries decided to punish the United States in particular, and the West in general, because of its support of Israel. So they cut back oil production severely. And my recollections of that time was of the gas lines and the gas shortages. People had to get up very, very early in the morning, and oftentimes gas stations were only open for an hour a day from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. and you were only allowed 8 gallons of gas, and the price of gas had almost doubled. And this was whether you could buy gas on a particular day was determined by the even or odd number that your license plate ended with. And so I recall vividly some people who had ran out of gas and they were pushing their cars to get into these long gas lines. Sometimes tempers would flare as people would try to cut each other off in line. And sometimes you got all the way up to the front of the line and then the gas would run out, or the gas station would be closed. So for example, you got there right up to the front there at 7 a.m. and then the owner would come running out and say, "That's it, that's all we can sell for today." And you would be all freaked out, and there might be other gas stations that were open from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. or for 2 hours or for just 3 hours. I remember that most gas stations were not open on Sundays, and they stopped selling gas Saturday night. So this had a huge effect on the stock market of the United States and on the whole economy of the United States. It was very scary. There was also talks of shortages of fuel for the winter, and people were concerned about that. I remember there was also lots of stories about the theft of gasoline, and some wealthy people built storage tanks in their backyards and that could hold 1,000 gallons of gas. Other people would go out in the middle of the night and they would try to steal people's gasoline out of their cars by siphoning it. And sometimes that went awry because people would come out and start fights because they noticed their car's gas was being stolen, or people would be shot and wounded for trying to steal the gas after a warning. And some people went to the hospital because to siphon the gas you have to basically suck on the rubber hose, and sometimes they would suck too much and they would get gas in their mouths, or they would swallow the gasoline and have to go to the emergency rooms. So the auto dealers and auto car manufacturers came up with the locking gas cap, and other independent people too invented locking gas caps so that people couldn't steal your gasoline because you had a key to unlock your gas cap. So that was an interesting development. And if there was an upside to the whole gasoline shortage, it was that the big gas guzzling cars that got very poor gas mileage over the decade of the 70s were gradually phased out in favor of both foreign four-cylinder imports, and then gradually the U.S. automakers also made cars that were smaller and more fuel efficient. But the 1970s in general was kind of a dismal decade in terms of economics. Nixon was president during the Arab Oil Embargo, and then Gerald R. Ford, his vice president, came into office when Nixon resigned in 1975. And inflation started to creep up, and I remember Gerald Ford introduced a program called WIN, which was Whip Inflation Now, WIN, and people were walking around with these WIN buttons on their coats and placards in their businesses. Then when Jimmy Carter, the president after Ford was not reelected, came in, things got even worse in terms of inflation. And I remember that inflation at one time went up to 19% toward the end of Carter's era. And I remember in supermarkets, people would rush to the supermarkets just about daily because prices were being increased. This is before barcodes were invented, so they used to put sticker labels with the prices on items, and then other items like cans had these purple stamped prices, like I used to put on when I worked as a stock clerk at a supermarket. And so those had to be taken off with rubbing alcohol, and then new stamps were put on, or new stickers were put on. And so every day when you went to the store, you would see big piles of the items would be out on the floor, and they would be putting the higher prices on them, and shoppers would be trying to grab some of the cans or the boxes items to grab it before the price went up. It was a kind of a scary thing because you never knew one day to the next what the prices were going to be. So those are my memories of those days.